So if we want to look radiant into our adulthood, we should get our skin high.
Yeah, I see what you did there. I like it. Yeah, so it's supposed to be the best friend to your sunscreen. You want to protect and prevent injury. Forget even all the other cool things that CBD will do when it gets into the skin, but we specifically studied and showed that we could prevent the classic DNA injury that you would get from exposure to ultraviolet radiation with this product.
Welcome to Startup Physicians. Please like and follow our show to join our community of physicians who are reimagining healthcare delivery.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Startup Physicians. This is your host, Dr. Alison Curfman, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Dr. Adam Friedman, a dermatologist. Thanks for coming, Adam.
My pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Curfman.
You can call me Allison.
I was trying to be nice. You got to feel it out a little bit, right? Thank you, Allison. Appreciate it.
Well, Adam and I met at a dermatology conference where we were both speaking. I highly recommend anyone who can go to a dermatology conference because they give out great skincare samples, right?
We love our swag. Absolutely.
Yes. But I was so impressed with your story, Adam. If I had to use a word to describe you that I can't use to describe most doctors, is that you are an inventor. Is that how you identify?
I think that's definitely one of my hats. Absolutely.
And I thought that was so cool. And before we started recording, I was even sharing that a lot of the people that I've interviewed on this podcast either do advisory work or they're more like me and they've helped build like a care delivery model. And I love talking to people who have built made a thing because like a real physical product because I'm always
touch it.
Yes, you can buy it, you can hold it.
Right.
Because it's such a different pathway and it has some interesting nuance to it. So I'd love if you can just share a little bit about your career path and what even got you started in the area that, took you over to the inventor world.
Yeah, I think the best way to start would just be to say I have career ADHD. And I think one of the reasons dermatology really pulled me in is the breadth of the specialty and the opportunities to really feed that multifaceted hunger in terms of engaging in various areas of medicine, clinical research, teaching, advocacy, community engagement. The list kind of goes on and on. And I think like many careers and many, whether it be titles or roles, you often fall into it by accident. You kind of it's about observing something and saying, that's interesting. Let me grab that by the neck and really lean in and make that part of what my future will look like. And to your point about being an inventor, that like many of my roles, I have a real problem with collecting titles at the end of my email signature. It's really should be on the DSM-4 criteria. It's a psychological issue. But I carry many hats, whether it be chair, program director, director of translational research. I oversee several specialty clinics. But the thing about inventor, that really came into play with the kind of need to do something unique to get into a competitive specialty. And actually, it didn't start with dermatology. I actually wanted to go into radiation oncology. To me, it was like, oh, look at these cool toys I get to play with and I get to save people's lives. Like that's a nice combination. And in a similar fashion, radiation oncology is a relatively competitive field. And I was trying to bolster my application by doing research and, kind of relying on past skills. I've been doing basic science research since I was in high school. And so working in a radiation oncology lab, trying to come up with ways to address gaps in care. In this case, how do we mitigate? How do we even prevent potentially radiation dermatitis, an expected outcome from what you do as a radiation oncologist, right? Like you are inflicting harm to actually help someone. That's kind of where this all came to be. I didn't go into that work with the mindset of like, I'm going to invent something for radiation dermatitis and no, that's going to change my whole career path and become a dermatologist. I think what it's about is always being curious in terms of what falls before you. That's where I think we all are inventors. We make observations every single day. The difference is, do you ask that question, like, why did that happen? Or why is this an issue? And how can we figure it out? And so in playing around with a technology that I'd used to study artificial blood, we're not going to get into that. in looking at how to mitigate radiation dermatitis, I really stumbled onto a way to make nanoparticles. These are little carriers, little thing about almost like little spheres that are at a billionth of a meter in size. They're invisible to the naked eye. This was not purposeful. This wasn't a plan. It was what did I just make here? This was a total accident.
And this was in a lab, like in a basic science
lab
that
lab,
you accidentally made nanoparticles?
100%. So this was at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. This was during my third year of medical school. And it really was one of those, like, I didn't expect this to happen. I was kind of playing around with this gel-like material I'd worked with for many years. And I tried to dry it out. I mean, not to get into too many details. And I was expecting this like nugget of, material. And it was just this fine powder. I was like, that's weird. And I think, to be fair, not everyone has access to the resources of a medical institution. I went to an analytical imaging facility. I had them do electron microscopy, which is not going to be in everyone's backyard. And I discovered I made nanoparticles. But I think the key thing for anyone is, so I find out I made a nanoparticle. What do I do with that? My approach was, all right, well, now that I do this, now I'm a nanotechnologist, apparently, learn everything there is to know about it, become the expert in the room. And then before you know it, you become that expert.
Okay, I'm going to rewind to a few things that you said that I find really interesting. So first off, you said that a lot of the things that, really propelled your career in one direction came about by accident. And I've said that before about myself, but then I'm actually going to challenge that the trigger may have been an accident. Maybe it wasn't an intentional thing. You made this, nanoparticle technology that you weren't intending to make. Same with me. I wasn't intending to go work at a private equity firm. Right. I didn't even know what that was. But when an opportunity or an interesting thing presents itself, you moved in that direction. Like it triggered you to take action and to continue to be curious and to continue to want to develop something or to say yes to something. And I think that there's actually opportunities all around us. Sometimes we're not aware of them, like especially doctors that are working in a more traditional setting. I think a lot of times are kind of just trying to get through, like more heads down, trying to figure out how to navigate the organizational politics and get their patients what they need and still get to their kids' soccer games. And so sometimes it's helpful to be in an environment where you're, and I do think of like research labs as like, you got to be curious to work in an academic research lab. So maybe it's not only that, somebody else might've made that powder and been like, oops, that didn't work. Like, yep. Where's my nugget, But I think that it's having curiosity as a core of your, one of your values, and actually acting on things. Because you could have made that powder and been like, that's interesting, and not done anything, and you would have never, gone down this pathway.
No, you nailed it on the head. It actually, you just reminded me of, I read an article recently about the history of Kevlar, the bulletproof vests that have saved countless lives. It was an accident. It was actually a mistake. And actually the woman who discovered it was told to throw it out. And instead she had her material analyzed and realized that it had incredible tensile strength, and it went down the road to save so many lives yet again. I think that's a great example. And there's probably so many of, you have a fork in the road. And I agree. It's not by accident. If you could walk through life and stumble into all these great opportunities, that would be incredible. We call that luck. It's the opportunity presents itself. It's what do we decide to do with it? And you don't have to be in lab to make those decisions. It's being, and you also mentioned the culture of yes, which is tricky. I would love for us to get into this. I think when you're early in your career, you got to say yes to everything. Within reason, but you really do, because you never know what opportunity will lead to many more. So much of my career, the different hats that I wear, the different even opportunities outside of GW, you mentioned consulting, advising, I get to do a ton of it and I love it. It is so much fun and rewarding. I learned so much from it, but saying yes is how it starts. The question is, how do you then learn to then say yes purposefully? And I think that's very hard. I do not have that answer. I am probably the greatest offenders of over.
You're overstretched. Yeah.
1,000%. But I think it is important to start there at least.
I just had this conversation with the group in my current course, and one of the people showed up. She was just like all lit up. She was like, I am so excited about so many things. I'm like, I'm probably doing too much. She's like, I'm pursuing this new board certification because I have all these ideas for this. And then I'm doing this. And I have these advisory roles that I'm interested in. And I might start my own practice. And it sounded like it was obviously like too many things for one person to do. But I told her, go for it, because I am very much a proponent of design thinking. And when you think about this, design thinking, you want to have what's called like a divergent phase and then a convergent phase to narrow in on the problem you want to solve. And then again, for the solution. So what that means is like very broad brainstorming and being open. That's, and when you're talking about like early in your career, you want to be really open. Or I think that, so if there's like trainees listening, you want to be really open, because there's unlimited like pathways you could take that could be very, very fulfilling and successful. There's not one life path that someone needs to be on. But I think that also applies to people who may be interested in a career change or something to add to their current career, to actually add like a full stack of like various threads to follow and start pursuing them until it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I've made my decision. This is not for me, or I am more interested in this one than that one. And so I'm going to stop doing that other one. So at the moment when this person showed up and was so excited, I was like, none of the things in your head are taking up too much of your time. You're just like brainstorming. So don't shut down your brainstorming of all the different things you could do. I've pursued multiple pathways at once many times in my career, and then dropped the ones that I'm like, oh yeah, now that I've done this a little bit, I'm like, that's not what I want to do. And so sometimes people only want to pursue one thing at a time, or they just get paralyzed with like, well, I don't know how I could take anything else on. So I'm just going to sit here thinking about the various options or things I could do. And then I'm just going to still not do any of them. Yeah. And actually, I think that not taking action is where a lot of people stay.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So you not only had a lot of opportunities, were in an environment to be very curious, and that was very rewarded in an academic setting, and you're still very academic, I can totally tell. But you then were following some of these threads of like, oh, that's interesting. What is this powder? And then, but a powder in and of itself, just like a Kevlar material with no real purpose, isn't valuable for anything. You have to figure out like, what is this thing and what purpose could it solve? And how did you get to that point?
Yeah, so I think there are almost two ways people kind of get to inventions. One is you identify a need and then you try to address it with ingenuity and creativity and invention. The other is stumbling upon, and that's probably more likely, that's like 90% of science, is making an observation and then going backwards to explain what it is you're seeing and why it's useful. So we identify, we can make these nanoparticles, knowing the materials that go into making them, knowing that we can mix and match, and it's extremely flexible to design these little tiny particles however we see fit for their intended purpose. So I think the malleability of the platform allowed us to really dive in and say, all right, if we tweak this or do this, how does that change their behavior? And that's actually what the last 20 plus years has been, to really characterize this technology, which ultimately is a platform technology, a delivery technology. And once we understood how it behaves, then we can start playing around. Well, let's put some stuff into it. Let's put biologically relevant, whether it be established things like established drugs, like antifungals, chemotherapeutics, or things that have not made their mark, whether it be over the counter or by prescription, because of shortcomings not in a vehicle. So let's say, I'll give you an example in dermatology. I think most people know about vitamin C. Vitamin C is a hot topic. And, just throw some vitamin C on your skin. That will work out nicely, said no scientist, because vitamin C is extremely light sensitive. It will oxidize as it hits air, and it's pretty much useless. So it's about the delivery that will allow you to capitalize on everything we know vitamin C, for example, can do. So there are a lot of things like that you really can't deliver effectively without a purposeful fill in the blank delivery vehicle. And that's kind of where the next part came in, is understanding how we can use these particles to stabilize, to deliver, to make actives that should be, for all intents and purposes, effective in the clinical space actually effective in the clinical space. So we went from, the Petri dish to animal models to now clinical studies. And we have products on the market. We actually have also RX pipelines, NIH funded programs looking at how this technology can be used to deliver something that you would say, we can't do it. It's not going to get through the skin. It's not going to get to its target. We now can deliver things that at their unadulterated, form will never actually get through the incredible barrier that is the skin. Because that's right. Our outer layer is our armor. It's designed to keep things out. That's also a problem when we're trying to get things through the skin.
Okay, so here you are, a medical student. You found this powder. You realized it could be valuable. You could find different ways to get it to treat things. You did more studies on it or research on it or whatever you were doing, discovering in a lab, and took a career pivot. And you're like, you know what? Instead of playing with redonk fancy machines, I'm going to go be a dermatologist, and I'm going to. You still have fun lasers to play with. So you still have some machines, right?
We do. We do.
So you chose a different specialty and continued to develop this concept or this idea. Did you get a PhD? I can't remember.
I didn't. I was torn.
You sound like someone who has a PhD.
My father is MD PhD. So a lot of this research, another nice side piece, if you can work with family in a way where you don't want to murder each other, it is wonderful. Like my father is my partner. He's like my best friend. It's so great because there are no boundaries that you would have with a hierarchy. Like he's my dad. So I can literally say almost anything to him, which makes it both interesting, but also very productive. So he was MD PhD. I considered it, but because of and a lot of this work was done in his lab, I had it like foot points or touch points is probably the right word, in the lab since high school. So I had all this exposure without having formal training. So it was something unique. I didn't have to go that route.
You got a PhD by osmosis.
I would love to believe that. Yes, 100%.
That's so cool. I've actually met several people this year who are physicians like you who work with their dad, which I think is so cool. Now I have to ask you, do you call him dad? Or do you call him his first name?
No. Well, yes, I call him dad.
If you're in a business meeting, I'm sure you use his first name.
No, yes, 100%. It is a little. It always ends up coming out, and he is the one to bring it out. Like he'll somehow work in a joke that I'm his son. I'm like, oh God, and
so funny.
And credibility completely undercut. But I know he means the best intentions. But yeah, no, there are times it's so weird. I'll be like, Joel said. I'm like, did I say that out loud? It sounds really weird to say my father's name out loud with him right there, but usually it is dad or my father.
Yeah, that's so funny. What a cool way to stay connected with family. I'm totally going off on tangents, but I had a call with my business mastermind last night. We were all reflecting on our core family relationships and how, as you become an adult, it becomes complicated. It can be hard to keep up with even your core family members. And it's so hard for me to envision right now because I spend so many waking moments with my children and they spend so much time with each other. It's just weird to think that someday we're not going to have that natural connection that we all live under the same roof. And I think that's such a special connection that you have with your father to be able to work with him. I myself am trying to really expose my kids to entrepreneurship. Anyone who knows me knows that we're kind of crazy. And this year, our kids are not going to school. They go to some crunchy granola co-op, but they are, they get all their work done in a couple hours and they spend a ton of time outside. And then they're taking a lot of courses on AI and other science topics. And my oldest son, who's 13, went to a Tony Robbins conference with me and came home and he's like, I'm starting a business. I was like, wow, that's great. Awesome. So I would love to have that sort of relationship that your dad has with you, with my kids someday. But that is a very, very special little caveat to your career path. So it sounds like, but it also highlights the fact that whether this was your father or someone else, one of the most important things for success is to have the right people around you with the right 100%. Skill sets.
Yeah.
And this leads into one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you, which was understanding. So nobody can develop an idea that's going to be successful, whether it's like what I did with a care delivery model or what you did with a nanoparticle drug delivery system, without a ton of feedback and input from a very broad set of stakeholders. And I see a lot of physicians get worried when they have an idea that like, oh, I can't tell anyone. I don't know what's secret. I don't know what's not. And so I'd love to get your take on IP, especially from the perspective of creating an actual physical product. I joke with people that nothing that I contributed to Imagine is actually IP. Like I could tell anyone all of our care delivery model because it's just like, this is the very best care we could possibly dream of to give to complex kids. Like it's not a secret that like, oh, hey, if you like support their moms more, maybe they're going to do better, or
what?
Yeah, right. Or,
who knew?
Or if they get their medications, they're going to have better, like, disease control. And so all of our IP comes from our contracting models and our data infrastructure that we've built, and all the way we, pull together like the claims data and HIE data to make predictive analytics. And so it's a tech and a contracting IP, but we could tell anyone what we do for these kids, and it's just best practice. But I would love to hear, as you walk down this pathway of accidentally inventing something and then trying to figure out how to protect it, and then you've obviously done more things. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so you need a team, and I know the historic. There's no I in team, which whatever. That's such a silly thing to say, but the reality is you cannot do this on your own. And let's start with the piece about holding it close to the vest. So when we think about patentability and protecting an idea, it's really referring to the public space. So really, what an IP lawyer is going to say is, please, for the love of God, do not publish this. Do not present it at a national meeting until we get this protected, or it's almost protected. Because as soon as it gets out to the public sphere, you have roughly a year to protect it. So from purely a legal protection standpoint, that's really what they mean. Now, in terms of sharing it, you got it. I guess certainly there are exceptions to every rule, but a lot of what I've learned about taking something from bench to the bottle in every respect, not just creating something, but protecting it and getting a company going, licensing deals, all those things. It was really learning in the moment. And you learn a lot through mistakes and pitfalls, but you can absolutely share this information. You're going to have to, maybe somewhat of a parallel to even career development. There's no such thing as too many mentors, because everyone's going to bring a unique, anecdote, a unique experience, a unique insight that can help. And I think having just one or two will be one or bidimensional. So I think it's absolutely fine with people you trust to share the idea, because sharing the idea does not make them an inventor. So if we're going to define inventorship from an IP perspective, it's that the people who came up with something that is not intuitive to some of your same knowledge, fund of knowledge and skill set. So if you took 3 dermatologists and put them in a room, would all 3 come up with the same exact idea? If the answer is yes, like to your point, providing support to parents of a sick kid is going to relate to good outcomes. We all would come up with that. That's not patentable. But if a unique way of delivering that care, not everyone come up with, that's what is protected. So I think it's fair to share the idea. Sharing the idea does not make someone an inventor. And actually, if you put inventors on your patent that actually don't fit the definition of an inventor, that could actually undermine the patent. Your competition could say, I'm going to challenge that patent. Let's pull it out. They have 30 inventors on here. That's weird. How did all 30 people contribute to this? And they can go through and they'll pull records and they could find that someone didn't, and that will actually undermine the patent. So I think it is very important to share your idea, to pressure test it with people you trust. But then you're going to need a team and expertise, because there's no way one person can wear every single hat that's needed, from legal to commercial, even from a clinical and even basic science perspective. You're going to need support. So building that team that has that good collaborative spirit, that will challenge, that won't just nod their head, it takes a very long time, but you absolutely need to do it.
And this actually really highlights something on the other side that is really helpful for doctors to understand, is that every concept, like we're talking about us as doctors creating a concept and getting feedback from a lot of different people. Now turn it around. If you have a founder or a firm that's building a concept that they're not clinical, now you see how deeply they need that broad set of feedback and why they need clinical advisors. They may have a ton of advisors on like payer strategy or contracting strategy or how to build the tech. But if they don't have that clinical strategy and insight, especially if they're building a clinical product, they could end up so far off target that it could kill the company. It could kill the concept. It could make it completely, there's safety concerns. Like we talked about this all the time. And imagine like if we launched and something bad happened to a child, like it would be horrible. And the company would be over. And so I've really brought a lot of perspective on exactly what these kids need and how we could deliver it safely. And no other background could have brought that. Like we need physicians in this space. And so the idea, that's why companies have advisory boards. That's why they have governing boards. It's an application of the concept that we need a lot of perspective and a lot of eyes on our idea in a protected way. And so if you're going to join someone as an advisor, you'll have an agreement in place, you'll sign an NDA. I tell anyone who is, kicking around a concept that they feel like maybe they could someday be interested in being a founder, just peel it apart and recognize like, what if this is like pre-NDA versus post-NDA, and NDA is non-disclosure agreement for people that don't know that, but like what is a secret and what is not a secret? So I tell people to like pretend they're making a public-facing web page. Anything that goes on the public-facing web page, great. Tell anyone, tell everyone. It will bring more mentors to you. It will bring more people, that people will make connections for you. So if your idea is to make a cardiology telehealth company and you have this, cool idea, like a lot of care delivery, like the value is going to be in the execution, not in the idea.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, and I want to hit on so many points, amazing points you brought up. So first, this is for any company sitting in the bleachers, get physicians involved early. I cannot tell you how many times I've been at an advisory board where the clinical trial protocol is already all said and done. They already have all their data. And you're like, what the F were you thinking? Like,
you didn't even measure the right thing. Yeah.
Like what? Like this is useless. And really what the company is asking for is for your stamp of approval. They're not about to go backwards. And you're like, oh baby, no, that was not
like, this is
right.
a horrible study. It was clearly not designed by someone who understands anything about science. Yeah. It's a huge need. And I've actually had like a lot of companies approaching me recently about designing validation studies. And so I'm trying to pass those opportunities along to appropriate physicians within my network that have that specialty background. But it's a very, for those of you who are academic that are listening, heck, if sensitivity and specificity and number needed to treat, all those things that we learn and have to take on our boards all the time, like those are really valid skill sets that, believe it or not, most venture firms don't have.
Yeah. I also like that you brought up the concept of paying it forward because it's a double win. So first of all, right, we can't do everything. There's no way we can do everything. And something that's really fun and I enjoy is giving others opportunities because none of us got here without that support. Like early in my career, I was very lucky to pull in a cohort of a lot of wonderful mentors, each of which opened different doors, whether it be to serve on an advisory board, be involved in early research, speaking opportunities, you name it. We got to keep that going. And so knowing that we can't do everything, even though you might want to, there is such gratification of helping someone else step up. And also it reflects well on you. I think a lot of people miss the point. When you build someone else up, it reflects well on you and your brand and will actually create more opportunities. You are not giving something away. You're investing in yourself and that other individual. So I find that especially as a department chair, that's one of my responsibilities, to build my faculty. And when I see my faculty succeed, it is like no other feeling. Like you can't buy that feeling. And so I really would encourage people that you do not lose anything when you support someone else, and it will lead back to you at the end of the day from many different perspectives. But as a great, but I'm glad that we share that enthusiasm for passing those opportunities on to others.
I think it goes back to, again, something we talked about before we started recording, which is like this abundance mindset. Like, so I I think that, it's easy as humans to become kind of a scarcity mindset, like, oh, there's only so many opportunities and I wouldn't want anyone else to take them from me. But we were saying this, like, there's no shortage of opportunities. There's no shortage of companies or ideas. There's no shortage of ideas. There's so many ideas. I am never worried about competition ever, because one of my goals with Imagine was I want us to create competition in this market. I want to do so well that other companies and other firms are like, you know what we should do? We should go provide more services for kids. Let's go get into the pediatric space. I was like, that is when we'll really succeed, is if we can actually develop a robust market for this. And so on that point, I want to actually highlight some of the work that you've done. And I will even say, like, when I asked you to share, like, is there a website you'd like to share? You gave me your LinkedIn, which is great, because I think that anyone who wants to reach out to Adam, like, he's obviously really great to talk to, loves to invest in other people. He is on LinkedIn, Adam Friedman. But he also has a website for a product, which I love to support other physicians and sharing what they've created. So, we will put that in the show notes as well. It is CI Elements MD, right? Is that right?
Carry the one. Yes, I think that's how you spell it. Yeah.
Okay. So C Elements MD. So it's the actual product, which is, again, I went to a dermatology conference with you and I received one. So, really cool product that is using your nanoparticle technology to deliver skincare into the skin. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah. So it's in the same vein of deliver and deliverable. So it's a cannabidiol CBD based product. Cannabinoids, obviously very hot area, kind of has had almost an arrhythmia-like, kind of story, in that people were really excited, especially when the Farm Bill passed and you could throw CBD in everything and it was legal. But all these products came out without any actual evidence, and it kind of injured the space. And I think CBD has so much potential in so many areas of medicine, but you have to deliver it correctly. And that's what we did. And in a clinical trial published in the #1 derm journal, we showed we could prevent DNA damage from ultraviolet radiation.
So if we want to look radiant into our adulthood, we should get our skin high.
Yeah, I see what you did there. I like it. Yeah. So it's supposed to be the best friend to your sunscreen. You want to protect and prevent injury. Forget even all the other cool things that CBD will do when it gets into the skin. But we specifically studied and showed that we could prevent the classic DNA injury that you would get from exposure to ultraviolet radiation with this product.
That's very cool. And you something you invented in medical school, people are buying and putting on their face. That's pretty
crazy. Cool. Yeah, I think that alone, I can drop the mic. And the fact that something I invented as a med student of all times of my life, and that people are using and buying, it's helping them. That is one of the most gratifying concepts. And still, I have to wrap my head around that. That people actually use this stuff, and and also when I get feedback about it, forget me using it, if they actually like it, that's another piece. Getting those testimonials, it's so unbelievably rewarding. One of the many rewards of pursuing that inventorship pathway.
That's so cool. Well, I appreciate you joining me today and indulging me on all these random rabbit holes that we went down.
Love it.
It was really fun. And again,
you said ADHD, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
all over the place. This is what you get when you get two people like us in a conversation. It's like you just have no idea what you're going to get. Well, thank you so much for joining, and I hope everyone really enjoyed this discussion, and definitely connect with Adam or check out his product. And we will see you all next time. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to Startup Physicians. Don't forget to like, follow, and share.